First Contact's price. The glittering spires of New Delhi's Space Command Center reflected the morning sun as Admiral James Winters reviewed the final preparations for humanity's first diplomatic mission beyond the solar system. The year was 2184, and the arrival of the Kraxan ships 3 months ago had changed everything. Their massive vessels, resembling crystalline formations that defied conventional physics, had appeared without warning in high Earth orbit. The initial panic had given way to cautious optimism as the aliens established peaceful communication, expressing interest in cultural exchange. However, something about their overly formal transmissions and carefully measured responses made Winters uneasy. After 30 years in the United Earth Defense Force, he'd learned to trust his instincts. "Admiral, the delegation is ready for final briefing," announced Lieutenant Rajesh Kumar, his aide. Winters nodded and made his way to the conference room, where the carefully selected team waited. Dr. Nathan Reed, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stood near the holographic display with his son Thomas, an unusually bright 10-year-old who had been chosen to represent Earth's next generation. The decision to include a child had been controversial, but the diplomatic corps insisted it would demonstrate humanity's trust and familial values. The delegation also included Dr. Fatima Hassan, expert in alien linguistics, and Ambassador Dmitry Volkov, a veteran diplomat known for his ability to bridge cultural divides. As Winters entered, their quiet conversations ceased. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "in 6 hours, you'll board the UES Horizon and make history. The Kraxan have provided coordinates to their homeworld, Krax Prime. Your mission is to establish diplomatic relations and negotiate potential technological exchange." The journey to Krax Prime took 3 weeks using the Kraxans provided faster-than-light corridors. Thomas spent the time learning everything he could about their hosts, his natural curiosity making him a favorite among the crew. His father watched with pride as the boy absorbed complex xenobiological theories with remarkable ease. The Kraxan homeworld loomed before them, a massive gas giant with floating cities suspended in its upper atmosphere. Their crystalline structures seemed to dance in the planet's shifting lights. The delegation was escorted to the central diplomatic platform by Archon Vextal, the Kraxan's chief representative. The first days of negotiations proceeded smoothly, perhaps too smoothly. The Kraxan agreed to every proposal with minimal discussion, their crystalline bodies pulsing with what Dr. Hassan interpreted as pleasure. Yet they refused to allow the humans to tour their facilities or demonstrate their technology. On the 5th day, everything changed. Thomas, fascinated by the swirling patterns in the gas giant's atmosphere visible through the platform's transparent floors, wandered away from the main conference area during a recess. Dr. Reed noticed his absence too late. The boy's screams echoed through the crystalline corridors. By the time the security team reached him, they found Thomas surrounded by a group of young Kraxan, their bodies vibrating at frequencies that were literally tearing the child apart at a molecular level. Later analysis would reveal they were conducting what they considered a simple resonance experiment. Dr. Reed's anguished cries, as he cradled his son's dissolving form, would haunt the delegation forever. Ambassador Volkov demanded answers, but Archon Vextal's response chilled them to their cores. The specimen's molecular structure was clearly unstable, the alien leader's translation device conveyed. "This provides valuable data about your species' limitations. We appreciate the opportunity for this learning experience." Admiral Winters, monitoring from the horizon, immediately ordered an emergency evacuation. As the delegation rushed back to their ship, the Kraxan made no move to stop them. Their indifference was perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the entire incident. The return journey was marked by grief and mounting rage. Dr. Reed, once an advocate for peaceful contact, sat in silence, his son's final moments playing endlessly in his mind. Dr. Hassan worked frantically to analyze all their recorded interactions, finding hidden meanings in the Kraxan's carefully chosen words. A pattern emerged. They had never once referred to humans as equals or even sentient beings. Upon reaching Earth, the truth became clear. The Kraxan hadn't seen their diplomatic mission as a meeting between civilizations, but rather as an opportunity to study what they considered an interesting but ultimately expendable species. Admiral Winters stood before the United Earth Council, his voice steady but filled with cold fury as he delivered his report. "They're not here to share knowledge or establish relations," he concluded. "They're studying us, testing our limits, deciding if we're useful. And they just revealed exactly what they think of human life." The council chambers erupted in angry debate, but the decision was unanimous. Earth would not submit to being treated as a laboratory experiment. If the Kraxan wanted to learn about humanity's limits, they would soon discover them firsthand. As the council session ended, Winters found Dr. Reed staring out at the city skyline. "They need to understand," Reed said softly, his voice changed by grief. "They need to learn that humanity isn't just another specimen to be dissected." Winters placed a hand on Reed's shoulder. "They'll learn," he promised, "and the lesson will be written in fire." That night, as Earth's military leadership gathered to plan their response, a new phrase entered the human lexicon: "Remember Thomas." It would soon become a battle cry that would shake the very foundations of an empire that had forgotten the most crucial scientific lesson of all. Some specimens bite back. Operation Defiance. In the 3 months following the Crax Prime incident, Earth underwent a transformation unprecedented in human history. The orbital shipyards above Mars, once dedicated to civilian exploration vessels, now blazed with activity around the clock as a new kind of fleet took shape. Admiral Winters stood in the command center of the newly commissioned Unity Station, watching holographic displays of construction progress across the solar system. Behind him, Dr. Fatima Hassan worked with a team of analysts, their findings about Kraxan communication patterns now being weaponized into electronic warfare suites. "The Phantom Fleet protocol is proceeding ahead of schedule," reported Colonel Jun Nakamura, head of the Stealth Systems Development Program. "The resonance-absorbing hull plating is performing beyond expectations." He pulled up technical specifications showing ships that could theoretically become invisible to Kraxan sensors. The inspiration had come from Dr. Reed, who had thrown himself into military research after his son's death. Studying the Kraxans' crystalline biology had revealed their reliance on resonance frequencies for everything from communication to sensing their environment. If humanity couldn't match their technology directly, they would exploit its fundamentals. In the depths of Europa's underground oceans, another project was taking shape. Dr. Isabella Romano, a brilliant quantum physicist, led the development of what she called frequency disruptors, weapons designed to shatter the crystalline structures of Kraxan technology and biology by generating opposing resonance patterns. "We're ready for the final test," Romano announced over the secure channel. The assembled leadership watched as a salvaged piece of Kraxan technology was subjected to the disruptor beam. The crystalline structure vibrated violently before exploding into dust. Winters nodded grimly. "Begin mass production immediately. Priority goes to installing these on our stealth vessels." But humanity's preparations weren't limited to military technology. In secure facilities across Earth, groups of gifted children, all around Thomas's age, worked with advanced AI systems to understand and predict Kraxan behavior patterns. Project Legacy, they called it, turning the enemy's fatal underestimation of human youth into a secret weapon. One of these children, Maria Patel, had made a breakthrough in understanding Kraxan tactical formations. "They think in crystalline patterns," she explained, her young voice confident as she presented to military strategists. "Their fleet movements follow the same growth patterns as their physical forms. Once you see it, you can predict where they'll be." The Kraxan, meanwhile, seemed content to observe from afar, occasionally sending small scout ships to probe Earth's defenses. Each probe was allowed to return with carefully crafted data, feeding the aliens' overconfidence. In lunar bases, Special Forces teams trained in zero-gravity combat, led by Commander Victor Rossi, a former space rescue specialist. "They think in straight lines and perfect angles," he told his troops. We'll show them how humans can move in 3 dimensions. As the weeks passed, Earth's transformation continued. The civilian space fleet was retrofitted with military-grade shields and weapons. Asteroid mining operations were converted to produce ammunition and armor plating. Even the Mars colonies were fortified, becoming fallback positions if Earth itself came under attack. Dr. Reed emerged from his laboratory one evening to find Admiral Winters reviewing the latest fleet deployment plans. "I've completed the resonance mapping of their command structures," he said quietly. "Their leaders will be the most vulnerable to the disruptors. Their crystalline forms are more complex, more brittle." Winters studied his friend's face, noting the fierce determination that had replaced his grief. "Nathan, when this starts, I'll be on the first ship out," Reed interrupted. "I need to see this through, James." "For Thomas." The Admiral nodded. He'd already decided to make Reed's ship, the UES Vindication, the flagship for their first strike force. The symbolism wouldn't be lost on anyone. Finally, after 90 days of preparation, Operation Defiance entered its final phase. The Phantom Fleet, consisting of 30 stealth vessels equipped with frequency disruptors, took up hidden positions throughout the solar system. The main battle fleet, led by the Vindication, conducted obvious training maneuvers to draw Kraxan attention. In his quarters, Admiral Winters recorded what might be his final personal log. They thought Thomas's death was a simple experiment. They're about to learn that humanity's children are not specimens to be studied. They're our future, and we will burn the stars themselves to protect them. The waiting game had begun. Earth's vessels moved like pieces on a cosmic chessboard, drawing the Kraxan into position. Humanity had transformed itself from a peaceful spacefaring civilization into something the Crystalline Empire never expected to face. A species that had turned grief into purpose and rage into carefully calculated vengeance. Shadow Strike. The first sign that something was wrong came from a Kraxan outpost in the Kuiper Belt. Their regular crystalline transmission patterns simply ceased, as if the station had vanished. The Kraxan Empire, confident in their technological superiority, dispatched a small investigation fleet. They would never report back. Commander Victor Rossi stood on the bridge of the UES Wraith, one of the Phantom Fleet's lead vessels, watching the tactical display as his stealth ships moved like shadows through space. The resonance-absorbing hull plating worked perfectly. To Kraxan sensors, they were invisible. "First blood," he transmitted to Admiral Winters, encryption protocols masking the communication. The outpost never knew what hit them. Their crystalline structures shattered like glass. Dr. Romano's frequency disruptors had exceeded all expectations. The weapons didn't just damage Kraxan technology. They completely destabilized the very molecular structure of their crystalline forms. The investigation fleet had suffered the same fate, their ships dissolving into clouds of glittering dust. On Earth, Maria Patel and her young colleagues in Project Legacy worked tirelessly, predicting Kraxan response patterns. "They'll send a larger force," she announced, her fingers dancing over holographic displays. "But they'll follow their standard crystalline formation. Here, here, and here." She marked points on the star chart where the enemy would appear. She was right. Within days, a Kraxan battle fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel exactly where predicted. But this time, Earth was ready. Dr. Hassan's electronic warfare teams flooded space with carefully crafted resonance patterns, confusing Kraxan communications. Their crystalline ships, attempting to coordinate, began moving in erratic patterns, their precise formations disrupted. Commander Rossi's Phantom Fleet struck from multiple vectors, frequency disruptors tearing through Kraxan vessels before disappearing back into the void. The aliens, unable to detect their attackers, began firing blindly into space, their energy weapons harmlessly passing through areas where they thought human ships might be. Aboard the Vindication, Dr. Reed monitored the effectiveness of each disruptor strike, making real-time adjustments to the weapon's frequencies. "Their molecular structure is adapting," he reported to Admiral Winters, "but not fast enough." Every adaptation makes them more brittle, more vulnerable to secondary frequencies. The battle became a dance of shadows and light, human vessels appearing and disappearing like ghosts, while Kraxan ships shattered one by one. Their commanders, their crystalline minds unable to comprehend warfare without perfect geometric patterns, fell into disarray. Colonel Nakamura's stealth systems proved their worth as Phantom Fleet vessels passed within kilometers of Kraxan capital ships without detection. The aliens' confidence in their superior technology had become their greatest weakness. They simply couldn't believe that a primitive species could achieve such perfect invisibility. In the Europa Command Center, Dr. Romano watched the battle telemetry with fierce satisfaction. They thought their crystalline forms made them superior, she commented to her team. They never considered that being perfectly ordered made them perfectly predictable. The Kraxan battle fleet, losing ships at an alarming rate, attempted to retreat. But Maria's predictions had accounted for this too. The Phantom Fleet had already moved to cut off their escape routes, herding the alien ships into a kill zone designated Thomas's Revenge. Commander Rossi gave the final order. All ships, execute pattern chaos. The human vessels broke formation, each attacking from a different vector, their movements completely random and unpredictable. The Kraxan, unable to establish any pattern to defend against, could only watch as their fleet was systematically destroyed. In the aftermath, as debris fields of crystalline dust drifted through space, Admiral Winters received reports from across the solar system. Not a single human ship had been lost. The Phantom Fleet's stealth systems had performed flawlessly, and the frequency disruptors had proven devastatingly effective. But this was just the beginning. The Kraxan Empire would soon learn of their fleet's destruction, and their response would be massive. Earth had revealed some of its new capabilities, but not all. The next phase would require even more innovative tactics. As the Phantom Fleet regrouped, Commander Rossi transmitted a final message to his crews. Remember why we fight. Remember Thomas. And remember that today, we proved that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our ability to turn our enemies' certainties into their vulnerabilities. The Shadow War had begun, and the Kraxan were about to learn that their crystalline perfection was no match for human adaptability and determination. The next phase would take the fight to their doorstep, and this time, Earth's vengeance would shake the very foundations of their empire. Breaking point. The Kraxan Empire's response was swift and massive. 3,000 crystalline warships emerged from faster-than-light corridors, their formations spreading across the solar system like a lattice of deadly light. But this time, something was different about their ships. They were covered in irregular patterns, attempts to avoid the resonance frequencies that had proven so devastating in the previous battle. Admiral Winters studied the tactical displays aboard Unity Station, his expression grim. "They're learning," he transmitted to the fleet commanders. "But so are we." In the Project Legacy Center, Maria Patel and her young colleagues worked frantically to decode the new Kraxan patterns. "They're trying to be unpredictable," she announced, "but they can't help following mathematical progressions. Their randomness has rules." Dr. Romano's team had anticipated this adaptation. The frequency disruptors had been modified, now capable of generating cascading harmonics that could find the resonant frequency of any crystalline structure, no matter how irregular. "They can change their patterns," she reported, "but they can't change what they are." The battle began in the outer solar system. This time, the Kraxan were ready for stealth attacks, filling space with sensor pulses designed to detect the resonance-absorbing hull plating. Commander Rossi's Phantom Fleet found their invisibility compromised, but not negated. "Switch to Protocol Mirage," Rossi ordered. The human ships began generating false sensor readings, appearing to be in multiple locations simultaneously. The Kraxan, their tactical systems confused, found themselves shooting at ghosts while real ships struck from unexpected vectors. Aboard the Vindication, Dr. Reed monitored the effectiveness of the new frequency disruptors. "Their adaptations have made their ships more resistant," he reported to Admiral Winters, "but also more energy-intensive. They can't maintain these defensive patterns indefinitely. The battle spread across the solar system, becoming a complex game of cat and mouse. Human ships used the asteroid belt for cover, turning the debris field into a deadly maze. The Kraxen's perfect formations were forced to break up, their ships scattering to pursue enemies they couldn't reliably detect. Colonel Nakamura's latest innovation came into play. Quantum echo devices that made destroyed Kraxen ships appear to still be intact and fighting. The alien fleet found itself responding to threats that didn't exist, their carefully planned responses becoming increasingly chaotic. Dr. Hassan's electronic warfare teams added to the confusion, broadcasting false communications that mimicked Kraxen command frequencies. Their language is based on crystalline resonance patterns, she explained. Once you understand that, you can make them hear whatever you want. The turning point came when a group of Kraxen ships, frustrated by their inability to engage the human fleet effectively, broke formation to launch a direct assault on Mars. It was exactly what Earth's forces had been waiting for. Now, Admiral Winters ordered hidden weapons platforms on Phobos and Deimos, Mars's moons, activated. Massive frequency disruptors, far more powerful than those mounted on ships, caught the attacking Kraxen fleet in a crossfire of resonant energy. The alien ships, their crystalline structures already stressed from maintaining irregular patterns, began to break apart. The destruction was total, hundreds of ships reduced to glittering dust in minutes. The remaining Kraxen vessels, witnessing the destruction of their comrades, fell into disarray. Commander Rossi seized the moment. All Phantom Fleet ships, execute Operation Shatterpoint. The stealth vessels emerged simultaneously from hiding, each targeting a Kraxen command ship. The aliens, their formations broken and their tactical doctrine in shambles, could not coordinate an effective defense. Maria Patel, watching the battle unfold, saw the pattern before anyone else. Their fleet structure is collapsing, she reported excitedly. Without their precise formations, they can't maintain strategic coherence. They're not just losing. They're losing the ability to fight as a unified force. The Kraxen fleet began to retreat, but not in the orderly manner typical of their species. Ships fled in all directions, their crystalline forms vibrating with what Dr. Hassan's team identified as panic, an emotion the aliens had likely never experienced before. Admiral Winters gave the order to let them go. They'll carry the message back to their empire, he said. Earth is not a laboratory specimen. We are not an experiment. We are a force they cannot comprehend or control. As the battle ended, Dr. Reed stood on the observation deck of the Vindication, watching the clouds of crystalline dust drift past. A junior officer approached with a report, then hesitated. Sir, she said softly, we've analyzed the debris. The frequency disruptors didn't just destroy their ships, they fundamentally altered the molecular structure of their crystalline technology. They won't be able to use these designs against us again. Reed nodded, touching the photo of Thomas he kept with him. They thought they could experiment on us without consequences, he said. Instead, they became part of an experiment they never intended, discovering what happens when you underestimate humanity's capacity for innovation and determination. The breaking point had been reached, but not for humanity. The Kraxen Empire's assumption of superiority had been shattered as thoroughly as their crystalline ships, setting the stage for the final confrontation that would determine the future relationship between the two species. Dawn of Reckoning. The final phase of the war began not with a battle, but with a transmission. The Kraxen Empire, reeling from their defeats, sent a message to Earth. Their crystalline language patterns, analyzed by Dr. Hassan's team, conveyed something unprecedented: uncertainty. They're offering to negotiate, Dr. Hassan reported to the United Earth Council. But there's more. Their language structure has changed. The resonance patterns no longer carry the harmonics of absolute superiority. They're speaking to us as equals. Admiral Winters stood before the council, his voice firm. We've proven we can defeat them in battle, but that's not enough. They need to understand why we fought. Why, we'll keep fighting if necessary. The council chamber was silent for a long moment before Dr. Reed spoke up. Let me go, he said. Let me show them what they failed to understand about humanity. The meeting point was set in neutral space, a space station constructed by a long-vanished alien civilization, its ancient halls a fitting place for this moment of reckoning. The human delegation arrived aboard the Vindication, accompanied by the Phantom Fleet. The Kraxan representatives emerged from their ships, their crystalline forms deliberately dimmed in what Dr. Hassan interpreted as a gesture of humility. Their leader, Supreme Resonator Zix, approached the human delegation. We have studied your response to our experiment, the alien's translator conveyed. We have learned that our understanding was flawed. Dr. Reed stepped forward, activating a hologram of Thomas. This was my son, he said, his voice steady. He was not a specimen. He was not an experiment. He was a child, filled with curiosity about your people, eager to learn and understand. The Kraxan leader's crystalline form vibrated in a pattern that Dr. Hassan's instruments identified as profound disturbance. We did not comprehend, Zix responded. Our young are formed fully aware, with all knowledge inherited. We did not understand the concept of childhood, of growth, of learning through experience. Maria Patel, who had insisted on being part of the delegation, stepped forward. I'm the same age Thomas was, she said. We've used what you thought was our weakness, our youth, our need to learn and grow, to defeat your perfect crystalline systems. Because humans don't just learn, we adapt. We change. We overcome. The Kraxan delegation's resonance patterns shifted dramatically as they processed this. Their crystalline forms began to vibrate in harmony with Maria's words, a sign of deep understanding. Your species has taught us something we never expected to learn, Zix acknowledged. Perfect order is not perfect strength. Growth requires change, and change requires imperfection. Admiral Winters watched this exchange with careful attention, ready to order the Phantom Fleet to strike if needed. But the Kraxan's next words made such action unnecessary. We propose not just peace, Zix continued, but reparation. We will share our technology, not as superior beings uplifting primitives, but as equals exchanging knowledge. And we will learn from you, about growth, about change, about the strength that comes from imperfection. Dr. Romano, who had been analyzing the Kraxan's crystalline structures throughout the meeting, made a startling discovery. Their molecular patterns are changing, she reported quietly. They're deliberately introducing variations into their crystalline structure. They're choosing to become less perfect, more adaptable. The peace treaty that followed was unlike any in human history. The Kraxan Empire agreed to establish a joint scientific council, with the first project being the creation of a memorial institute in Thomas's name, a place where young humans and Kraxan could learn from each other. As the delegates prepared to depart, Dr. Reed had one final question for Zix. Why did you really come to Earth in the first place? The Kraxan leader's response was surprisingly candid. We sought perfection in the universe, Zix said. We found instead a truth we have forgotten. That true perfection lies not in unchanging crystal, but in the ability to grow, to learn, to become more than what we are. Aboard the Vindication, returning to Earth, Admiral Winters found Dr. Reed in the observation lounge, watching the stars. Thomas would be proud, Winters said softly. Reed nodded, touching the hologram projector that carried his son's image. He helped humanity reach the stars, he replied. Not the way we expected, but perhaps the way we needed. His death taught them about humanity's grief and rage, but his life, his curiosity, his eagerness to learn, that's what finally taught them about humanity's heart. As the ship approached Earth, the crew could see changes in the Kraxan ships escorting them. Their once perfect crystalline forms now showed subtle variations, the beginning of their own journey of growth and change. The war had ended not with the extinction of an enemy, but with the birth of understanding. Humanity had proven its strength not just through victory in battle, but through the power of its grief, its rage, and ultimately, its capacity for transformation. Thomas Reed's death had sparked a war, but his legacy would be peace, a peace built not on perfection, but on the endless potential of change and growth that his short life had embodied.